Okay, hello everybody. How you guys doing? My name is Mark. This is Why I Hate the World. Thank you all for joining. It is January 12th, 2022, and today we're going to be talking, unfortunately, about COVID conspiracy theories, and then we're going to watch a video of Tucker Carlson and make fun of him. So, anyway, So there is this conspiracy theory around. Well, actually, before we do that, let's take a look at where we're at. This is our current state of the dueling dragons. I think we're going to go ahead and end this here because, frankly, I'm getting a little tired of working on it. Maybe I might do some more. I added some clouds on the back here, so they're sort of like they're flying through the sky or whatever. I think it turned out pretty good, you know. Maybe I might add a little more to the clouds there, and maybe some more lighting and some deeper shadows, stuff like that. But I think for now we're at a pretty good stopping point with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and just start something new. But anyway, I will put this up on DeviantArt so you guys can check it out and download it if you want or whatever. But anyhow, yeah, I think this turned out pretty good for experimenting on how to use this program. I think it actually turned out rather well. So let's go ahead and close that and let's create a new one. Let's see, new, yeah, resolution 300, blah, 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 custom from create. Yeah, okay. I guess this is just creating something blank, right? Not even really sure what to really work on here. Um, but let's see, let's get a pencil brush out of here somewhere. Do they have something that's like a pencil? No, that's square. See, I'm still learning how to do this, so, you know, bear with me, folks. There we go, pencil. Anyway, so there is this conspiracy theory that I've been hearing recently that has to do with hospitals giving out race-based treatment for, you know, COVID. Essentially, not just like prioritizing non-white people when it comes to vaccinations, stuff like that, right? And it basically sounds like a load of shit, if you were to ask me. It's pretty much bullshit, But there's been a couple of stories in the news, In particular, there was for example, in New York, you know, there was a news story in the Washington Post about how uh, non-white people, in particular black people, were getting preferential treatment, when it came to monoclonal antibodies, that kind of thing. And this has gotten around. It's all over right-wing media right now, you know. Oh, hang on. Sorry about that. It's all over right-wing media. It's all over, all of the alt Twitter ripoffs, like Getter and Rumble and Fapper and all those other whatever the fuck they're called, right? Stuff like that. Oh, you know what we need to do? We need to make a new layer. Let's do, oh, paint layer. Okay, there already is a layer. All right, that's cool. And let's see, how does this work? Okay, kind of feels like a pencil. It's a little funky there though. Let's see, let's undo that. And we need to make this a little more, let's make it bigger first off. And we need to make pressure. There we go. All right, let's try that again. That's a little bit better. It's kind of, not exactly a pencil, but, I think it'll work, right? Let's make it a little bit bigger. Anyhow, oh wait, that's tilted. Do they just have like a normal pencil? That'd be kind of weird. So the truth is, there is a little bit of truth to this, right? It's not as cut and dry as it seems. There actually have been, there we go, number two pencil. There are some, I guess, policies in various states. That's much better. There we go. Yeah, that's much definitely more. Right. Let's step back there. Undo. So, and what's going on is that, well, the hospitals are kind of determining that, and that doesn't look good, that they're using race as a determinant as a risk factor, right? And there's a reason for that. The reason is because when it comes to vaccinations, right, non-white people are most definitely like by far less vaccinated, right, than white people in this country. Um, and especially like when it comes to hospitalization and death rates, like the chances of you being hospitalized or dying from COVID goes up if you're not white, if you're, Latino or blacks, especially black. It's like almost double what it is for white people. And so a lot of hospital systems around the country have decided to use this as to use this as a determinant as to who should get preferential treatment, right? And a lot of conservatives, a lot of white people are hopping mad over that, and it's kind of making its way around. Like I said, the alternative conservative media sphere. You know, the Twitter ripoffs. The conservative parts of Facebook, things like Getter and BitChute, stuff like that, right? And then it hit Tucker Carlson. Okay, so I want to open this video here. I've got a video of Tucker Carlson. Let's turn this on. And this comes from Media Matters. So let me just put this down in the chat for those of you who like to follow along at home. Let's see. Let's put that down there. Right. Okay, this is what we're going to be looking at today. And let's see, maybe I'll just make that a little bit bigger. So this is Tucker Carlson essentially spreading around COVID misinformation, but misinformation when it comes to treatment, um, you know, when it comes to treatment and race, right? So I'll let you read all through that if you want, but this kind of started with this particular, there's a tweet right here of a guy that's basically being told by a doctor or a nurse or whoever this is that he does not meet one of the high risk factors, right? And what's going on before I play this, before I open this video here, here's the context, okay? In red states out there, a lot of the red state governors, governors of states like Florida, for example, or Alabama or something. A lot of them have kind of been skirting that line when it comes to vaccinations, right? Because they don't want to upset the insane Republican base, the anti-vax base, right? Because that's kind of what Donald Trump's base is now. And Donald Trump's base is essentially about 30% of Republicans, right? And they've kind of effectively, they've been successful in politicizing vaccinations. You know, I don't know if you've heard recently that, Donald Trump himself is kind of like, taking a hit from these people because he told them to get vaccinated and they didn't want to, right? And so now he's kind of like facing a little backlash himself. It's sort of like, the Frankenstein's monster, like you create it and then you can't control it, right? So, and that's, yeah, it's roughly about 30% of Republicans, which is really disturbing because if you think about that number, that comes out to like 40 million people. It's really kind of sad and disturbing. 40 million people have just bitten, you know, um, have just sort of drank the Kool-Aid on this, right? All the way. So, Republican politicians, instead of telling their people to go get vaccinated, right, like they should have been doing, what they've been doing is they've been touting treatments as an alternative, right? And it just so happens that, the only actual treatment that really works at this time is monoclonal antibodies, right? That's pretty much it, is when it comes to things like, because you hear all this misinformation about things like ivermectin and, all this other ridiculous baloney, right? None of that bullshit works. Okay, it's the only thing that actually works is monoclonal antibodies, right? That's the experimental treatment that Donald Trump got when he caught COVID, right? So they've been kind of saying that this is an alternative. If you get sick, just go to the hospital, get monoclonal antibodies, you'll be fine, right? Problem is, monoclonal antibodies are extremely expensive, right? It's something like $1,800 a dose or some ridiculous crap like that. You know, it was over $3,000 a dose, and that's kind of come down a little bit. The government has subsidized this to a point, right? But the problem is that there's just not enough, right? There's shortages and shit out there. And one of another conspiracy theory that's kind of going around now in right wing, on right wing Twitter and elsewhere, is they're saying that, is this another conspiracy theory that the Biden administration is withholding monoclonal antibody treatments, which is bullshit. He's not. The thing is what actually happened is that red states like Florida and Alabama and Georgia, well, formerly Georgia, but basically those states where the governors are telling people not to get vaccinated, they've been hoarding monoclonal antibodies, right? And Joe Biden basically is making that a little more even. So now it's going to people based on need, and it's not being hoarded, right? This is kind of a leftover from the Bush administration, where we still kind of we didn't really have an effective distribution strategy when it came to PPE and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember during the Bush, I mean not the Bush, during the Trump administration, not Bush. Um, like if you remember right, Donald Trump put Jared Kushner in charge of like distributing PPE and distributing medicine and stuff like that, and completely just fucked the entire thing up and essentially just said, okay, well, the governors are, you're like on your own, right? That's what we got from the Trump administration, right? And yeah, I don't like how that looks. That looks like shit. We're gonna erase that. Anyway, so oh wow, it even erases like a pencil, which means you have to do it like 3 times in a row in order to get it to not show up anymore. Okay, that's cool. Um, You know what we're gonna do here? Let's just do a quick outline. I usually don't do this, but I usually just sort of go from the shoot from the hip here, but we'll just do a quick outline of what we want this to look like. Um, so anyhow, right, so if you remember, that's how it kind of went, and now Biden is looking to, make this a little more even between all the different states so that, the Republicans don't hog all the fucking, you know, hog all the monoclonal antibodies, right? Um, and the Republicans are not liking that. They're not liking the fact that they have to actually share things. So that's one thing, right? But there is still very much a shortage when it comes to monoclonal antibodies, and because the red states have been hogging them all, so the hospitals have to give them out according to need. And this guy here in this Twitter post is not vaccinated, and he's trying to claim that the fact that he's not going to get to be able to use monoclonal antibodies is because of race, which is bullshit. So let's go ahead and watch this real fast. So this was back in November 13th.
So I'm not gonna be able to get it today because I don't qualify.
Yep.
What if I like smoke and vape? I heard that was no. Okay. But if I were black and Hispanic, then I'd be able to qualify. Okay.
See how he's like bringing that in? Oh, if I were black and Hispanic, I'd qualify, right? And the problem is, well, let's see what the nurse says, right?
I'm being denied medical service because of my race. Is that?
That's the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what I do, I go around and make sure everyone meet the criteria.
Okay.
So yeah, that's the criteria that was set forth. If you were 65, you'll be good. But nope, you're healthy and you're healthy and no medical conditions. So research showed that you should be able to fight off COVID. Maybe it's for someone else, may preclude them a little more, or make them a little more susceptible to being worse with COVID. Any questions?
So did you hear what she said right there? Right. So he said, "Oh, is it because of my race? If I were black or whatever, I get it." She said, "Well, this is the criteria." Right. Now, admittedly, because this is actually true, it is true that some hospitals are giving people that are, black or Latino, they're giving them first shot at these, treatments, right? And you can see how that would rub some people the wrong way, right? I mean, it's true and it's true, right? So we can't deny that it's actually happening because it is. The reason why, you got to think, well, why are they doing that? Why is the hospital, you know, engaging in that, right? The reason why is because black people, Latinos, right? Pacific Islanders, basically every non-white ethnic group except for Asians are dying of COVID. There's more infections, right? If you get hospitalized, you're more likely to die, right? And they have by far very, very low vaccination rates, right? So the hospital, let's go ahead and let's get rid of that because there's only like 1 second left. The hospital is not engaging in this culture war. The hospital doesn't care if you're black or white or whatever, what you believe, if you vote for Republicans or Democrats, the hospital doesn't give a shit. The hospital is not in the business of fighting some silly ass culture war. All the hospital cares about is saving lives, right? And these are the facts. The facts are if you're black and you get COVID, you're more likely to catch it and you're more likely to die from it. Now, why is that? Right? We can sit there and try to figure out the reasons. You can debate those reasons. Um, why is that exactly? Most likely because of socioeconomic factors. That tooth looks horrible, doesn't it? Oh, fuck. Let's just work with it. What the hell? Maybe we won't make a demon face. Maybe we'll just make some other thing here. Forget it. I'm tired of erasing. We're just gonna go for it and just make whatever. See, this is why I never plan stuff when it comes to shit like this. I always just like to just do it. Um, yeah, hospital doesn't care. This is most likely because though the reason why is it's most likely socioeconomic, right? Um, if you're not white, you are more likely to make less money than the average white person. You're more likely to not have health insurance or to have shittier health insurance, right? That's just the truth. You're more likely to not be able to take the time in order to go to the doctor or something like that, right? Um, a lot of people don't get vaccinated. That first off, a lot of black people don't trust vaccinations, for whatever reason, whether it's they believe it's all conspiracy or if they think it's not something that's, in their best interests or whatever, or maybe they have a history of, you know, they have a history of not trusting doctors. You get things like the Tuskegee experiments and stuff like that, you know, as to why they wouldn't trust the medical establishment, stuff like that, right? So there's lots of different reasons, or it could be just as simple as, hey, if I get vaccinated, I'm going to be put out for possibly a few days, and I can't afford to take time off of work. That it could just be that. It's like, well, if I take one day off of work, I'm screwed. Can't afford to miss any work, and if I get vaccinated, it's going to mess me up, and I'm going to have to call out, and I can't do it. It could be whatever reason. It doesn't matter, right? And that's the thing. To the hospital, they don't care what that reason is. They don't care whether it's, maybe the person's a complete conspiracy nut and they just don't trust vaccinations. Maybe they think lizard people are like using vaccinations to turn everybody into zombie slaves, and then, you know, when the G5 cell towers turn on, it's just going to kill everyone who got vaccinated. Yeah, that's an actual conspiracy theory. Maybe they don't care. They don't care whatever reason why somebody doesn't want, it's not that's not what their business. Their business is, how can I save this person's life? Somebody came to the hospital, they're dying, they're going to die. I need to try to do everything in my power to save them, right? And so they've decided, well, then we're going to make this as part of the, people that fit these criteria are going to be part of the high risk factor. That's what it is. It's a high risk factor. And they've decided to use race as a high risk factor, right? Where did this come from exactly? Well, it came from a recommendation from the CDC, right? And this was something that was determined way back when COVID first started. Okay. And this is what Tucker Carlson here is going to talk about. So let's scroll down a little bit, right? This particular article is really good. It's all about how Tucker Carlson is basically spreading more misinformation than freaking you know spreading more information misinformation than fucking InfoWars, right? But let's go ahead and listen to what Tucker Carlson's got to say on the matter. Where is he? Wait, did I pass him? Here he is. Okay. So let's go ahead and do this.
In the weeks before Joe Biden took office, a little over a year
Make
ago,
that
federal
bigger.
officials met to decide how they were going to distribute the new COVID vaccines. If you'll think back, you'll remember that December of 2020 was the deadliest month to date in the COVID pandemic. More than 65,000 Americans had died that month.
So, yeah, this is how far back we're going. So this is about a year ago, right? So we just had vaccines um, approved and starting to go into widespread use at this point. This is December of 2020, right? It wasn't, back then there was a very limited supply of vaccines, right? And they kind of had to decide who was going to get what first. It wasn't, today you can just go to any grocery store or pharmacy and get a vaccine. In fact, today they're begging you to take them, right? But back then it was more like, they had to basically ration it out because they didn't have enough to go to everybody. So that's what the context of this is all about. So moving on.
People were very afraid of the virus then. There was no treatment protocol for it. Vaccines seemed like the only hope. So the meeting was very significant. The CDC's chief medical officer, a person called Kathleen Dooling, unveiled her plan to distribute the vaccines nationally. She began by acknowledging that older
All right, so now he's going to start lying. Okay. But yeah, this is vaccine sheet. Now, there is a let me just copy this and let's make this a little smaller. Let's go over here. So this is the report that he's about to mention. Okay. This is the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices Ethical Principles for Allocating Initial Supplies of COVID-19 Vaccine. So let me go ahead and put that down in the chat for you guys there as well. Okay, so this is what he's talking about. So he's about to explain what this all is, right?
Americans indeed faced the greatest risk, as everyone understood. So logically, if you wanted to save as many Americans as possible from dying, you would give preference, the very first shots, to people over 65. That's the obvious policy. It might be the only morally defensible policy. But there was a problem with doing that, she explained. Older Americans were too white. As Dooling put it, quote, racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults age 65 and older.
So that's the first lie. Okay, so what did he just say? He just said, okay, the first people you'd want to give it to are old people, 65 and older, but they decided not to do that because Miss Dooling there said those people are too white. First lie. Complete, total lie, what he just said. Okay, let's go over here, right? Let's make this a little bigger so you guys can actually read this. Okay. Make that a little bit bigger. In fact, you know what? I'm going to put my drawing on top of this. I'm going to put my drawing down here, and this way you guys can see this. Okay, so what exactly is this article, right? This is a recommendation. This article here, basically, this report is a recommendation of high risk groups and who should get the vaccine first. So remember, this is December 2020, right? There are limited vaccines in existence, right? There's not enough to go around to everybody. And this is to decide, okay, well, who are the highest risk groups and who should get the first crack at it, okay? Now, if you scroll down here, right, these are the essential questions for COVID-19 allocation planning related to ethical principles, okay? Um, And if you look down, so it basically says here's the questions, right? Which groups are at the highest risk? Which groups are essential to the COVID-19 response, right? Which groups are essential in maintaining critical functions of society? What are the important characteristics of these groups? Okay. So these are the things that they have to consider. So they can't just consider, okay, well, who's the most vulnerable? All right. They have to consider all of these things. Okay. Who is the most important is what they're trying to determine, right? Who's the most important to functioning of society? All right. And if you go back, remember, this is what Tucker Carlson said. Okay. He's saying, oh, well, we can't give it to people who are 65 and older because, Kathleen, what's her name, said that there's too many white people in that group. But that's not exactly what the report says. The report doesn't actually say that. If you scroll down, and you find, let's see, where exactly that this quote comes from, right? See this, racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults age 65 and older. If you scroll down, right, this is where that quote comes from. Table 2, application of ethical principles to 4 candidate groups for initial COVID-19 vaccine allocation. Okay? So what does that mean? Well, they identify 4 different groups. Okay, these are the groups that they identified that should get the vaccine first. All right, healthcare personnel, right? Other essential workers, your delivery people, your truckers, your guys keeping the wheels of society moving. Nuclear power plant operators, stuff like that, right? Adults with high risk medical conditions, and then adults to age 65 years and older, right? So and then this table, this kind of lays out the reasons for and against. Okay. And if you look here, right, this is what this is what it says about people who are aged 65 years and older when it comes to mitigate health inequities. Okay. Because one of the things they're charged with, if you read up through here, is to make sure that they do this justly, promote justice, right? They put out an entire paragraph. Just to paraphrase it, it basically says we're going to make sure that there's no systemic racism in how we distribute these vaccines. That's what basically it says. Okay, they're saying that we're going to make sure that it's not only just white people that get it, that everybody of every ethnic group gets a equal share this time. It's going to be fair. Okay, it's not going to be all non-white people dropping dead while the rich white people get like all of the vaccines. No, that's it's specifically written into this, right? So this is what it says here. Here's the entire quote. Okay. Although racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults age 65 years, right? See, if you notice here, he cut that part out. He took the although part out and then he ended it right there. 65 and older, put a period. That's not exactly what it says, right? Let's read this again. Although racial and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults aged 65 years or older, certain groups have disproportionate COVID-19 related hospitalization and death rates. See that? It was specifically put in there because even at this time in December of 2020, non-white people were already being hospitalized and dying at higher rates than white people. Even then, this is like a year on, and it was like the data doesn't lie, right? And this is the reason why they put this in there, why they made this recommendation, because they wanted to address that inequity. Because the reason why that's happening is because of, systemic racism, right? You know, wealth inequality and systemic racism, and that's why. And if you really think about it, it makes perfect sense. Black people make less money. Black people and Latinos make less money than white people. They're more likely to have jobs that require contact with a customer base. Whether you're working in a restaurant, whether you're delivering stuff, whether you're working in an office, something like that, they're more likely to have a job that requires contact with the general public, right? Less likely to have a job that allows them to work from home the same way that, you know, many people in the white middle class are able to, like myself. I was very lucky to have a job that allowed me to work from home, right? That's just the simple fact. And if you're in contact with the general public, you're more likely to get sick. If you make less money, you're more less likely to go to the doctor. When you can, right? When you should, right? You're less likely to trust doctors, less likely to have the money to be able to afford to go to a doctor. So you're going to try to stay home and ride it out and get self-treatment, chicken soup, shit like that. And then you're more likely to infect more people and you're more likely to die. And so they decided, seeing how this was the data, this was the reality, they made this recommendation. Well, no, we're going to make sure that you know, these vaccines are distributed equally. That's what this is all about. That's what this entire report here is all about, making sure vaccines are distributed equally, right? Tucker Carlson is lying about that. He just completely misrepresented this entire paragraph right here, misrepresented that entire thing. Let's listen to what he just said one more time, right?
People over 65, that's the obvious dueling, unveiled her plan to distribute the vaccines nationally. She began by acknowledging that older Americans indeed face the greatest risk, as everyone understood.
It doesn't actually say that here. That older Americans have the greatest risk doesn't actually say that in this report. So that's a lie. That's a lie also.
So logically, if you wanted to save as many Americans as possible from dying, you would give preference the very first shots to people over 65. That's the obvious policy. It might be the only morally defensible policy.
I don't know if you noticed that either, but that's also another rhetorical trick that he just said. When he just said that, oh, obviously, if you wanted A, then you do B. Yeah, obviously, right? He's basically what that is. It's sort of like setting the table, right? He's setting the agenda there so that if you disagree with him, you're the one that sounds like you're being, um, you're the one who sounds like you're out of line. So you'll see that whenever somebody wants you to agree with a point they're about to make, right? So that if you disagree with it, it's like it's a rhetorical trick to make you like sort of trick you into agreeing with them, right? So this way you're gonna hate, what's her name? You're gonna hate Kathleen Du. I can't remember her last name. The author of this thing, because he's about to like say something that insults her. But if you actually look at what the report says, it doesn't actually agree with Tucker Carlson's assessment, right? So let's go on.
But there was a problem with doing that, she explained. Older Americans were too white. As
Lie.
Dooling put it, quote,
Complete
racial
lie.
and ethnic minority groups are underrepresented among adults age 65 and older. And this meant, according to Dooling, they could not be allowed to get the first COVID shots, whether they needed them or not.
There you go. Completely just took this entire thing, misrepresented it, and twisted it around and to try to use basically racism in order to, I guess, smear the CDC? Like what's the point of this exactly, right? It's to make the Biden administration look bad. That's what the actual point is. That's what it really is here. He's essentially just using suffering and death in order to score brownie points, right, against the Biden administration, trying to say that, oh, they're doing things unfairly, oh, they're racists or whatever, right? They don't like white people, which is complete and total bullshit, If you actually read this thing, right, it doesn't say that at all. You know, let's move on.
So instead, Dooling recommended giving priority to a group the government started calling essential workers. Their main qualification was not that they were essential, but they were less white than old people.
Does not say that either. Does not say that at all. This is not what the report says, right? The report gives it does and the report there that he took that quote from does not actually say who or what should, who should actually get the vaccine more than anybody. What it does is that it lays out the pros and cons. So, I don't know if she made that recommendation later, then yeah, maybe. I couldn't find that in this report. There in the report that he cited on his show that he took the quote from that he misquoted, by the way. It doesn't say what he actually just said. So complete total fucking bullshit, And the reason why, because what was the reason he just said? Because there's less white people there.
A group the government started calling essential workers. Their main qualification was not that they were essential, but they were less white than old people.
Complete racist misinformation. Horseshit. It's despicable almost. And this guy has 20 million people watching him every night. 20 million people saw this and think that the CDC is out to get them because they're white. Right? Because this asshole's lying to them. It's fucking despicable, man. It's absolutely fucking despicable. And then you wonder why, 50% of Republicans think that violence is justified in order to take the country back or whatever. You wonder about that. Then you wonder why 40% of Republicans don't want to get vaccinated, right? I mean, if they're listening, it's because they're listening to shit like this every day. It's no fucking wonder, right? If this guy was your only media, input, right? If this is where you got your news from was Fox News and Tucker Carlson, you would think the world is a very dangerous place, and that the government was out to get you, and that there was a war on white people and white genocide and all this other fucking bullshit, the Great Replacement and all this. It's no wonder people believe this shit, you know. And is this causing national is this on the front page of every news website? Tucker Carlson stroking racial hatred? No. No, it's so common, no one is even gonna comment on this at all. It's like it happens so much nowadays that we just don't even care. That's what's really wrong with the country, right? If you really wanted to think what's wrong with the United States, why is the United States so fucked up? It's because of this. It's because we allow people like this to radicalize vulnerable segments of our population and get away with it. There should be a law against this. There should be a law, and that's the problem is that you can't outlaw this type of ridiculous speech. But you know what? There used to be laws against say for example, there used to be laws like the fairness doctrine, where if you gave uh, you know, one stance, one political viewpoint on your TV show, then you had to give the opposite point, right? Maybe we ought to go back to that. Maybe there needs to be a guy coming on right after Tucker Carlson saying, hey, everything this guy just said is complete bullshit and don't listen to it. Here's the actual real truth. Maybe that needs to happen. Maybe we need to mandate that by law, right? You know, you're talking about freedom of speech, right? When they say, the government is not allowed to tell you what you can not, you can say, right? Or you can or you can't say. But does it say well, compelling a media outlet to give both sides of the issue on a story like this when it comes to, this kind of thing? Does that really fall under that? I mean, it was kind of like that law existed for decades and decades, you know. Maybe it's time to fucking bring it back cuz think about how many people are being misled by this and they're not going to go get vaccinated because of this because they think, oh, it's all a conspiracy anyway. Oh, it's all Dr. Fauci trying to fucking kill me or whatever. Right? It's I don't know. Absolutely fucking ridiculous. So let's move on.
So that's what the CDC went with. Its panel overwhelmingly approved Kathleen Dooling's recommendation. None of this got a lot of notice at the time, but it was a major change. Never in American history, modern history in any case, has the federal government made it official policy to withhold life-saving medical treatment from Americans on the basis of their skin color.
See, there you go. There you go. That's how you can basically twist around anything. So he's basically saying this, in real life what's happening is that, well, these are people from high risk groups that we've determined are from high risk groups, right? Which the data is showing are dying at a much higher rate, so we're going to give them access to this, to life-saving treatments, right? And he can turn that around and say that, oh, they're giving out, they're denying people based on the color of their skin. All right. First off, there's no hospital that's saying, hey, you can't get on this respirator because you're white. There's no hospital that's saying that. There's no hospital out there that says, hey, you can't have, you're about to die and monoclonal antibodies will save you, but we're not giving it to you because you're white. That's not happening, all right? And that Twitter video that we saw, that guy was not at that stage. That guy was like, just coughing or whatever, and he tested positive. He wasn't in an ICU dying, right? Because if he was, they would give him the antibodies, right? Now, he asked for the antibodies, and they said, well, no, because you're not in the high risk group and you don't need them because he wasn't, critical, right? Because that's why. That's because these fucking antibodies are, they're a limited commodity, right? Partially because all the fucking Republicans are refusing to get vaccinated, and so they're using them all up. That's the reason fucking why. So no one is being denied life-saving treatment, right? Because of the color of their skin. Okay? That's not what's happening, right? What's happening is that, if they were to take, someone who was like, okay, this is a black person, he's got the comorbidities or whatever, is he vaccinated? No, right? They're going to do what they can to help him, right? But they're not kicking people out of the hospital because they're white. They're not denying people treatment because they're white. That's not what's happening. It's complete and total bullshit. But there you go. It's like any effort to address inequities in our society is always met with these types of just bigoted, racist lies and pushback. You know what I mean? It's very much sort of like a way of seeing the world, like a zero sum game of way of seeing the world. Like if you know, if I get help, that means that someone else doesn't. You know what I mean? Like I guess the way to express that is what I'm trying to say is like, it's like to people who have spent their lives with privilege, when they are faced with like equality, it feels like oppression to them. I guess that's the way to put it, right? He's trying to frame equality as oppression, and that's total fucking horseshit, right? Another thing he's lying about is Kathleen Dooling claiming that she wrote this report here. She did not actually write this report all by herself. If you look here, there are like 20 other people who were also wrote this report, so it all just didn't come from her. I don't know why he chose Kathleen Dooling exactly, why he decided to put a picture of her up on the screen or whatever. Maybe he just doesn't like her. Maybe he figured, oh, it's a woman. My audience will be more likely to jump on the bandwagon and believe this lie if I can add some misogyny to it as well. That's probably the reason. Reason's probably because she's a woman, so he figured that he can you know, kill two birds with one stone, get some racism and misogyny in there at the same time. Um, so what the report actually says, because it doesn't say that, white people, it doesn't say black people should be vaccinated first. It doesn't say anything like that at all. It just, what it really does is that it addresses inequities. It says that, because in real life, you know, and this is actually in the report here, in real life, um, for adults that were more than 65 years older, right, who were black or, not white, essentially, like non-Hispanic whites, right? Um, it was much higher among them, much higher among black people and like, Hispanic people than it was for non-Hispanic whites, right? Um, the rate at a rate of basically three times the rate. So at that time in December of 2020, if you were a black person over the age of 65, you were three times more likely to die of COVID if you caught COVID than a white person. Right. So think about that, what's the hospital supposed to do about that? That's actual science there. The science says, hey, these people are dying at a much higher rate, you know. So are they supposed to just ignore that completely, right? Or, let's imagine if you're running a hospital, what do? Right? These numbers come from the CDC, they're trustworthy. Do you just decide, oh well, we're just gonna, it's all just going to be completely colorblind, or are you going to actually listen to the facts and science and try to get these people some help, right? The hospital decided to do this to actually try to get people help because, they're not playing games. They don't care about, culture war stuff. They just want to save lives. And it's, I don't know, really truly despicable that this is being like manipulated in that way. Right. Anyway, let's move on a little bit.
But that's exactly what the CDC did. Those most likely to die of COVID had to wait weeks until their vaccines were approved.
Yeah, that's another thing, right? They were highly vulnerable, but just because you're over the age of 65, right? At that time, if you think about at that point, it didn't make much sense to give them all of the vaccines, right? So people who are over the age of 65 are vulnerable, but they're also mostly retired, right? They're, you know, mostly out of the workforce. They can shelter in place because this is what we were doing. If you remember way back in December of last year, there were lockdowns. You're supposed to stay home. You weren't supposed to go out to work. If you could work from home, do it. If you could get stuff delivered, do it. They didn't even want people to meet with their families over Christmas last year. I don't know if you remember because there was a massive surge, right? So what's, the main easiest way to stop the spread of COVID is to not catch it in the first place. Stay home, shelter in place. Well, who are the people that actually need to go out and go to work? Essential workers, right? People keeping the lights on, people like delivery guys. And it turns out that, your average guy working at Taco Bell was more essential to the economy than, your average white collar, middle class office worker at that point, right? They were the ones that actually had to go and go to work and deal with people and deliver hot meals to people and stuff like that, right? The guys, the people working in gas stations, right? Nurses and doctors, another one too, right? People working in deliveries, right? Trucking, stuff like that, you know. These were all the essential workers, people that we needed them. Teachers, that was another one. Those were also essential workers. You know who wasn't essential? Guys who do shit like me, right? People who work in an office pushing, clicking buttons on a computer all day. I could just do this at home in my bedroom. I didn't have to like be essential. I didn't need to get vaccinated. I could stay sheltered in place, right? Not so much like, all of the people that were actually essential workers who just happen to be the people that get paid the less, the least amount in our society. Funny how that works out. Funny how, like, the more essential your job is to the functioning, of society, of keeping the lights on in our society, the less money you actually make. It's funny how that works. Maybe that's a reason why our country's so fucked up, if you think about it, right? Moving on here.
How many of them died in the meantime as they waited? No one kept track of those numbers because nobody seemed to care. And because nobody cared, the trend continued.
Except we did keep track of how many people died, you know? Maybe some red states didn't really keep track, like Florida, for example. There definitely were some places that they purposely misrepresented how many people died. But no, we definitely kept track. I don't know if you guys remember Christmas of 2020, but yeah, at that point, it was something like what 3,000 people a day dying from COVID, right? We most definitely fucking kept track. You know, it was the conservatives, the Republicans, the Trump supporters, and places like Infowars and Fox News. Those were the people that were like downplaying the numbers, right? Because it made Donald Trump look bad. I don't know if you guys remember this, man. I remember it very well. I was streaming about this shit back then when this happened. I mean, this was only a year ago, right? It's funny how yeah, it's like it's only been a year. They're already gaslighting us about, trying because people have very, very short memories in this country, right? I don't know, man.
Race had become a deciding factor in the distribution of critical health care in this country. Several states made it explicit. Whites would go last in the COVID vaccine queue, regardless of need. The state of Vermont did this, so did the state of Montana. And then
Yeah, that the complete bullshit. You have to say it every time, right? Can't let them get away with this at all. Okay. In no state, in any of the states, did they say white people will go last just because you're white. That's complete and total bullshit. Okay. So what is he talking about when he talks about Vermont, right? And he talks about Montana. So let's look at Vermont. So I found this here. Let me open this up. Right. This was a story I found. Um, Scott decries racist response to bio. Fuck you. Go away, AP. Right. Biracial. Basically, this is people of color, black, indigenous people of color vaccine eligibility. Right. So this article here, let me put this down in the chat as well for you guys. Let me just take that, put this down in here. Okay. So this is essentially what Tucker Carlson is talking about in Vermont, right? Where they were talking about the governor of Vermont was, you know, condemned the racist response to his administration's decision to make black, indigenous, and people of color of any age eligible for coronavirus vaccine before residents of other races, right? So if you look at this, um, this is why. Now, why, because you go, okay, well, wow, he did make them eligible sooner, right? Well, why would he do that? Okay, so it's right here. About 20% of the states, basically, when they say BOPIC, it's black people of color, right? Indigenous people of color. So basically, non-white people, right? Black people, Hispanic people, Native Americans, right? And also Pacific Islanders, for some reason, have a very high unvaccinated rate. It's almost as high as black people. Like black people are like the second highest, and then the first highest for like people who don't get vaccinated are Pacific Islanders, which is like I don't know why. Maybe there's some kind of cultural thing going on there, but it is what it is, right? We're dealing with reality here. We're not really worried so much about, the cause for it. We're worried about, we're talking more about steps that are being done to address these things, right? Um, and if you look, it says, okay, about 20% of the states, I'm just going to say non-whites, right? Population has received at least one dose of the vaccine, compared with about 33% vaccination rate for non-Hispanic white residents, Scott said in a statement Monday. So that's why. That's why they made it, they wanted to make it easier for non-white people to get vaccinated because at that time, you know, 33% for the white people, 20% for everybody else. They were lagging behind. Okay. And it's not a good thing to have an entire segment of your population die off from a disease while, all of the white people live and are happy. That looks, not only is that look bad, it's just, morally unacceptable, right? You can't force someone to get a vaccine. You can't go and put a gun to their head. We're not doing that in this country. There are some countries on earth that are, for example, Australia, right? Australia is going to fine people $5,000 if they don't get vaccinated, right? Which I don't know. We'll see how that works out. I mean, when I hear that, I go, "Damn, that's crazy," you know. But then I think like, well, maybe they'll all get vaccinated. But I know that that solution would never happen here. They would never allow that. You know what I mean? Like you can't, in this country, you can't force people to get any medical um, procedure at all. It's just not possible. It'll never hold up in court, right? Ever. You know, you can only do everything you can in order to encourage it, right? Um, and you you can't throw people in jail for not taking it. You can't, but you can bribe them. You can do everything possible. There were states were giving away lottery tickets and shit like that. I don't know if you remember. States were like basically paying people to get vaccinated when last year, all kinds of different stuff. All that shit's legal. And what they did here in Vermont was just they made it available for non-white people first because they were a higher risk group because they were less vaccinated, right? So in order to address that, in order to get vaccinations into the arms of people who actually needed it, right? This is what they decided to do. And if you read the actual article, what it says later on is that on April 1st of last year, they made it so that black people and non-white people were able to get vaccinated. And then other people had to wait until April 5th. And then those over 30 had to wait. Those under 30 had to wait until April 12th, and then April 16th for the last group. So basically, they got like a 2 week head start. So it's not even like you know, it wasn't like okay, we're giving it only to black people and nobody else is allowed to get it. It was like literally like 2 weeks. If you weren't in a high risk group, which included, in this case, people of color, then you had to wait a lousy 2 weeks to get vaccinated. Right. Unbelievable. And then this is becoming national fucking news. Tucker Carlson is talking about it on his show like it's white genocide. It's like, so you had to wait fucking 12 days for crying out loud, right? It's how does that, and like I said, folks, it's when you're privileged, right? Equality looks like oppression. You know, when you've had, basically the deck stacked in your favor your entire life, suddenly when you have to play fair, it seems so unfair. And that's exactly what's going on here, right? That's exactly what it is. And how many people who watched Tucker Carlson on his show, right, are going to bother looking up where he got his sources from to see what it actually says? How many people watching his show actually said, I'm going to go look up what the policy actually was in Vermont? Is Tucker Carlson telling the truth? I wonder. Zero. That's how many. All right. Conservatives and Republicans and shit, they don't fact check. They don't. Okay. He could have said anything. And that's the thing. That's what people don't get. He could say anything he wanted in his show. He could have like come out there and said that, Joe Biden is a baby killer and he's personally going around and putting cyanide in vaccines and forcing people to get them. He could have said any kind of ridiculous shit that he wanted and they would eat it all up because Republicans do not fact check things, right? Generally, authoritarians tend to listen to the authority, right? That's what's going on, you know? This is why these people, can get away with telling such ridiculous lies and nobody from their side ever pushes back. Is anyone from, Fox News is a news organization, right? Is anybody on his news channel, are they fact checking him? He has an entire news department to research things. It is very, so anybody out there who thinks, oh, he doesn't know, he's not doing their, no, no, he has like an entire staff of people that can go and research stuff for him. It would be very, very easy for him to not tell lies in this instance, right? In order to actually get the actual real truth and explain what's going on, right? He's telling lies on purpose. That's what we got to remember. Okay. Kind of the same story happened, the same thing happened with Montana. All right, here's the Montana Health Center COVID-19 survey summary report, right? So you can see how many people here. I'll put this down in the chat also. Okay. There's a table here that says vaccinations by race, and ethnicity. Here we go. And if you look, you can basically see that white people, white, non-Hispanic, Latino patients. So basically, white people. If you look at their rate of immunizations, right, 50% of them, right, are vaccinated. This was in Montana, right? And then this column here is the have they gotten their second dose? Immunizations completed. 64% of white people have gotten 2 doses, right? And then if you look at this, or actually 64% of this 50% is what it is. So it's like 50% of all the patients have been have gotten their first dose, and then of those 50%, 64% of them got the second dose, and then of those, 64% of those actually got the third dose. So that adds up to a lot, right? Look at Black, African American, non-Hispanic, Latino patients, right? How many of them have gotten their first dose? 0.46% is what that says. Can you see that? Let me just move my thing here. So, okay, yeah, you can see it, right? 0.46%. Okay. That's how many. So, look, let's look at that one more time, all right? White people, 50%. Black people, 0.46. So, not even 1% of black people in Montana have even gotten the first shot, gotten the first vaccination, right? Absolutely ridiculous. Okay. I mean, it's, and then if you look down here, Native Hawaiian, other Pacific Islander, 0. Right? So for some reason, the, Pacific Islander people have gotten way less, you know, it's like, so yeah, that's the reason why in Montana they said, hey, if you're black, you can come get vaccinated, right? And we're gonna make it easy, and we're gonna give it to you, first, because less than 1% of the black people in Montana were vaccinated at this time. That's what's going on here, right? It's like, but if you listen to Tucker Carlson, you think it's fucking white genocide. It's disgusting, man. Absolutely disgusting. Let's move on here.
Then the moment he was declared president-elect, Joe Biden made it official. A concept called equity, a kind of hyper-aggressive, racially hostile affirmative action, would form the basis of everything the new administration did, beginning with COVID policy. Here's Biden before even being sworn in last year.
I want to be very clear what my priorities are for distributing this emergency aid swiftly and equitably. Our focus will be on small businesses on Main Street that aren't wealthy and well-connected, that are facing real economic hardships through no fault of their own.
Isn't it nice, just a little side note, isn't it nice actually having a president who, can speak and doesn't sound like he's trying to, fucking, I don't know, sell you a used car? Right? Isn't it nice to actually have a president that seems to, care about people? Whether he does or not, I don't know. Maybe it's all an act, maybe it's bullshit, whatever. But at least at least we have that veneer. It's back. It's like, okay, at least the president is at least trying to sound like he gives a shit about people, you know? It's kind of refreshing. It's kind of like, oh yeah, this is what it used to be like, you know, back before the country lost its fucking mind. This is what a president used to do. The president used to get up and actually say shit and try to help people, you know. President used to actually not like engage in fucking Twitter wars with celebrities and fire like every single person like 10 times a week. Has Joe Biden fired anybody recently? You know, has he, for example, I don't know, fired his press secretary or like, his communications director, like what was that guy Scaramucci? He was in there for like fucking, he was like a communications guy or something like that, and he was in there for like a week, you know? Has that happened to Joe Biden yet? Has Joe Biden like actually like, you know, fired anyone? Like, is it? I don't know. It's nice. It's nice having a president, a presidential administration that doesn't have like a turnover rate that's like higher than fucking McDonald's, isn't it? It's almost like we have competent people running the fucking country again, you know, which is really sad, which is really kind of sad and disturbing because it's like, even these guys can't really, I mean, obviously shit is still fucked up. Right. I don't mean to be like filleting Joe Biden here. All I'm really saying is it's like, man, the difference in leadership is very, very painfully obvious. And it almost kind of makes me think like, dang, maybe if we like, if our country didn't lose its mind and vote in a fucking like, you know, scam artist to be fucking president, maybe a lot of this shit wouldn't have happened. Maybe we'd be in a much better fucking boat than we are now. But I don't know, man. We have to deal with what we got, Unfortunately, until somebody invents a time machine, we're stuck. So, moving on.
Our priority will be Black, Latino, Asian, and Native American-owned small businesses, women-owned businesses.
So you'll notice the assumption in that sentence, which undergirds all the assumptions behind the administration's equity policy. And that is that non-white means poor and non-white means less healthy. As a factual matter, that's certainly not true across the board. It's not even close to true.
Yes, it is. It is. When it comes to COVID-19, it definitely is. We just saw the proof. We just looked at it ourselves, right? This is science. This is not, what we just read there, right? These reports from Vermont and Montana and the CDC, right? People aren't making this up. This is actually true. You know, if you look, less than 1% of black people in Montana getting vaccinated at that time, right? That wasn't a lie. Somebody didn't just make that up. Okay, this isn't like, you know, these people, these agencies, they don't have political like any sort of like political reason to spread lies like Tucker Carlson does. They're not there to impress anybody. They're not, you know, part of some media machine. That's another thing that people forget. Now everything's so polarized nowadays, right? Everybody thinks that every single thing that you hear and read has an agenda. And it's like, well, no, not really. Sometimes only the agenda they have is to try to save lives. That's their fucking agenda. You know, not everything is part of a culture war, right? Not everything is intended to be politicized. It's people like the Tucker Carlsons of the earth who politicize everything. These are the guys that they have to politicize fucking the pandemic, and they have to politicize Mr. fucking Potato Head, and they have to politicize fucking, getting a vaccine and all this other shit. And they have to politicize fucking Dr. Seuss and like whatever. These are the people that are actually like making everything a fucking like, making everything a fucking like battlefront in their own personal fucking culture war, right? Whereas like the people that work at the CDC don't give a shit about any of that. They don't care about black or white, right? Or whatever. They don't give a fuck about your race. They care about saving people's lives. And this is what the fucking data shows. So, He just lied right there one more time again, you know. We should go through one of these, and I wish I could do this. I wish I could put like a little lie counter, and every time Tucker Carlson lies, it just goes up by one. You know what I mean? Kind of like Cinema Sins. You know, you ever watch Cinema Sins when they talk about all the bad stuff this movie did or whatever? We need one of those, but for political pundits to see how many lies someone like Tucker Carlson or Laura Ingraham or whatever racks up in an 8 minute time span, right? I mean, by my count, we're already at like fucking 50 or some shit like that. I don't know. He's lied a lot in like, what is it? What is this? It's only been like what, 3 minutes? He's already told like fucking maybe not 50, maybe more like 12, 11 or 12, I don't know. Anyway, moving on.
In fact, the highest income groups in this country are not white. But they've run with it. And he made good on that promise. In its first year,
Wait,
the Biden
wait. The highest income groups in this country are not white? What? Wait a second. What was that?
behind the administration's equity policy. And that is that non-white means poor and non-white means less healthy. As a factual matter, that's certainly not true across the board. It's not even close to true. In fact, the highest income groups in this country are not white. But they've run with
The highest income groups in this country are not white. What? What is he talking about? What is he talking about, like NFL players or something? Like, wait, all right, we got to look that up. We got to look that up. Let me move this over here so you guys, don't accidentally see anything that Google auto search suggests to me. Right. Let's see here. Highest income groups by race. List of ethnic groups in the United States by household income. All right. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say about this. Okay. Race and ethnicity. Let's see. Medium household income. Asian Americans, 87,000. White Americans, $65,000. That must have gone down a little bit. This is for what? 2018. African Americans, $43,000. Other races, $48,000. That's funny. Kind of looks like the highest income earners here are Asian and white people. The lowest income earners are African Americans and other races, which, I don't know why they have. Oh, here we go. Medium household income, alone or in combination with other races. Okay. So it's still roughly the same. So this would be an all white or an all black family. And then this would be like a mixed family here. Still the same. Black people still have, actually the lowest. If you look here, Latinos slightly higher, 51,000, right? Non-Hispanic or Latino, 64,000. I'm assuming if it says not Hispanic or Latino, that must be something like, East Asian or something, um, like from India or something like that. So yeah, kind of looks like Tucker Carlson lied another time by claiming that the highest income earners in the country are not white people. It's like, yeah, well, you know, I mean, I guess if you can say Asian people do definitely earn more than white, so maybe technically he wasn't incorrect about that. But trying to make it sound like, oh, the white people are on the bottom of the social hierarchy, not exactly true. Not exactly true at all. Moving on.
with it. And he made good on that promise. In its first year, the Biden administration awarded billions of dollars in COVID relief, for example, to black farmers purely on the basis of their skin color. Race was the only criterion. Now, doing that was illegal, obviously. It violated all kinds of federal laws, and a federal court soon struck it down. But the White House didn't stop. They accelerated.
Yeah, I read about that also, right? Where they did offer, they basically what he's talking about there is that there was COVID relief for black farmers, right? And it was like, here's the thing about that, right? It's not always racist to use race as a determinant for, things like aid, for example. That's not always a racist thing, okay? You know, would you say, for example, that affirmative action is a racist policy, right? What actually is affirmative action? 'Cause this is, affirmative action is always a favorite target of the far right wing. Yeah, they really can't stand the fact that, like, there are special programs that allow, black people and Latinos and non-white people to go to college. They really can't stand it. And surprisingly, a lot of Asian people really don't like affirmative action either because they say it discriminates against Asian people, right? What actually is affirmative action? Okay, affirmative action is using basically trying to address social inequities through education, right? Saying that, hey, we have a seat here, right, for, we want to recruit black people to come to our college, you know, or, non-white people. So let's say blacks or Latinos, right? We want to recruit them to come to our college, and we're going to actively try to recruit them, and we're going to help them, with financial aid and stuff like that, right? That doesn't really, I mean, yes, it does use race as a criteria, but not in a negative way. That's, so I guess if you use the technical, like, definition of racism, you could say it's a racist policy, but it's not a, damaging policy, right? It's not a negative policy. It's a positive. It's a positive thing to get people education, right? To help people who would otherwise not be able to afford to go to college, to help them go, right? Now you can make, you can argue one way or the other because, there's some people say stuff like, well, it's wrong because it's allowing people who don't qualify, whatever. And, maybe that's not a good thing. Maybe you don't want to lower standards or anything like that, right? I could agree with that. I personally think that's a load of shit. I don't think that really happens so much as everybody says. That's a favorite thing that the right wing uses to try to attack affirmative action programs. Doesn't necessarily mean it's always occurring. You know, there are plenty of colleges out there, for example, that say, well, you still have to qualify and get into the college. We're not going to lower the standards to allow people to go in. Perfectly understand that. I don't even think that's even really a thing that happens, to be honest, right? Usually when I read news stories about that, when I read stories about how like such and such college lowered their standard, their admission standards in order to get minorities, it usually ends up being bullshit, but I'm not going to deny and say it doesn't happen because it very well may happen, right? But I don't think that just the practice in and of itself of affirmative action is wrong. You know, it may not be perfect, but it is one way that we can try to address systemic racism in our society, right? The other thing I would say about it is like, well, what's your proposal? Like, what other way do you propose addressing it? Because it's true that poor black people tend to not go to college, even when they could conceivably, qualify. If they could pass the entrance exams and all that, there are still hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people, black people in particular, who just can't afford to go to college and just never will because they don't get any scholarships or whatever. They come from, an economically disadvantaged background. They simply don't have the money, and they either end up taking jobs out of high school because they have to make ends meet or doing other things in order to make money to survive, and they can't afford to drop, especially now when fucking college is like ridiculously expensive nowadays. It's can cost you like fucking 50 grand and shit just to get like a bachelor's. It's like fuck, and that's like if you're lucky. I mean, if you're going to an actual real prestigious school, I mean, we're talking like shitload of money, right? And there's like a student loan like fucking crisis nowadays. You know, I remember that. Back in 2006 is when that happened. They passed a law basically saying you're not allowed to default on student loans. And even way back then, when they passed that law, it was in the news saying, "Hey, this is," there were people saying this is going to turn around and this is going to fuck people up in the future. you know, if you pass this law, it's going to create a crisis. And sure enough, we have a student loan debt crisis, $1 trillion owned by people who have spent money to go to college, and it's like you need to go to college in order to basically have a decent fucking life nowadays, right? You know, you do. Okay. The chances of you getting a decent job without a college degree are like almost zero. And I can tell you this because I don't have I don't have a bachelor's degree, right? I don't, right? I got lucky, and to tell you the truth, for years there would be people that, I'd be at my desk doing my thing. There would be people who were right out of college who were 10, 15 years younger than me, sitting right across from me making the same amount of money I was, 2 years out of college, where I'm fucking like busting my ass, working 10 times harder, right, to get where I am. That's what college does for you. It's earning potential more than anything else. That's what having a degree does. It basically opens those doors so that you can get a good job, depending on what your field is, way earlier. And it's not like you can't get it if you don't have the degree, but you're going to work harder, you're going to work longer, you're going to work for less, and your boss is going to be younger, 10 years younger than you, right? Trust me, this is what fucking happens. Okay, speaking from experience here. So anyway, I don't know how we got onto this. Oh yeah, we're talking about affirmative action. That's basically what happened. So getting all the way back to the article here, went off on a little bit of a tangent. You know, that's basically what that program was. They decided to give they were going to give some relief to black farmers. Farmers owned by black people, by women, by non-white people, right? And this was the sort of COVID relief dollars. Was what this program was. I'm sure you guys remember we all got stimulus back last year, a couple of stimulus checks, right? That because when the government's saying, hey, you need a lockdown, you can't work, they should give you some money to make sure that you don't fucking go broke, right? They should have gave us way fucking more, but still, everybody ended up getting like what, 2 grand or something like that last year, whatever. Everybody should have got way more. You know, that's what this was. This was what Carlson is talking about here. The help for black farmers was part of the COVID stimulus. It was to make sure that they didn't basically go under, you know. And it was that the thing about it is that it was a long time coming. It's not like these people didn't need the money already. And what he's saying here, it got like, overturned in the courts or whatever. I don't know about that. I'll have to look that up. But it sounds kind of plausible to me. It sounds, like this would be exactly the kind of thing that some fucking activist, right-wing activist douchebag piece of shit would take to court and fuck it up because he's an asshole. Because he can't stand the fact that black people are actually getting money that they should have had in the first place. That sounds completely plausible to me, and I'll have to look up exactly what that's all about. But anyway, just wanted to, that last 20 minutes of a long fucking diversion that I just went on, you know, too long didn't read of that is that it's not always racist to use race as a determining factor, especially when it comes to a government program. Moving on. Sorry, folks.
And they applied that same standard to everything, very much including the allocation of health care. Health
No, they
care
didn't.
for all, that was the slogan for generations. The new slogan under the Biden administration was health care for favored groups.
We've never had in this country health care for all, ever. We do not have that in the United States. I don't know why he said that, because we don't have universal health care in the United States. We have the opposite of universal health care. We have a for-profit healthcare system, and it is very much not healthcare for all. It's healthcare for people who can afford it. And if you can't afford it, you don't get shit. That's what it is in the United States. So why did he say healthcare for all? Why did he say that? We do That's not ever been a thing. In fact, the people from his side of the aisle, the Republicans, the conservatives, the libertarians, those people, the corporatists. Those are the people who are stopping healthcare from all from actually becoming a reality, right? Those are the people that vote down things like, universal healthcare. Minnesota passed a law, of single payer health care law in Minnesota, and the right wing and the Republicans and the conservatives killed it. You know, they got into power and they basically took away all the funding for it. You know what, that looks like shit. We're gonna erase that. They took away all the funding for it and it collapsed. You know, they when Obama tried to overhaul the healthcare system, with the Obamacare, the ACA, right? They're the ones who sabotaged that shit. And we ended up getting like a watered down version of Romney Care. That's what the ACA is. And then they spent like all of the Obama administration trying to overturn it every 5 minutes. They passed what was it, 64 different resolutions in order to try to repeal Obamacare, right? All throughout the Obama years. Of course, as soon as Trump got into office, they stopped doing that. You notice as soon as they got into power, the Republicans suddenly, like, healthcare just went out the window. Like when Obama was president, it was like, oh, every single fucking week they're passing another thing trying to repeal Obamacare. Then as soon as Trump becomes president, it's like, oh, they forget all about it. Completely gone. It's like, and they never actually came up with their own healthcare plan. They never actually did. From Donald Trump, it was like, oh, hey, our healthcare plan is coming in 2 weeks. That's what he said. 2 weeks. And then people will keep asking him, well, it's been 2 weeks. Where's it coming? It's coming in 2 weeks. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to be covered. That was a campaign promise from Donald Trump. Yeah, everyone's going to be covered. That's what he said, right? Never fucking happened. They never did it, right? He never had a healthcare plan because it was like never part of his agenda to begin with at all. It was a lie. It was a lie when he said that. When he ran, it was a lie. It was a lie when all of the Republicans for 8 years tried to fucking, well, not 8 years, more like 6 years, tried to repeal the ACA, 60 fucking times, right? That was a lie. Okay. It's a lie right now when Tucker Carlson is saying like healthcare for all is what everybody said. No, it was never healthcare for all, ever in this country, right? It was never healthcare for all in this country because of people like him. So, kiss my ass. Fuck you. Hypocritical piece of shit. Can't let him get away with this, folks. Got to point it out every time. Moving on.
And those policies continue tonight. They're illegal, they're immoral, and yet they are all but ignored by the media and, by the way, by Republican lawmakers.
They're illegal and immoral. It's immoral to give people health care. Right? That's what he's basically saying here. It's immoral. You know, we have the data that says these people get vaccinated at a much lower rate. They die at a much higher rate. This is the truth. And this is somehow it's immoral to try to help them, you know. You know what this reminds me of? I mean, I'm going to stop going on these tangents here. I made a video a little while back called the bigotry of low expectations. It's another one. Like I have a couple of videos that I have that consistently get a few views and comments here and there, and this is one of them. I made a video on the bigotry of low expectations. Right? What does that mean? The bigotry of low expectations is a basically a thing that it's a criticism of social programs that you get from the right wing, where they say, okay, if you acknowledge that there are such things as inequality and you try to do anything to help the victims of inequality, they try to turn it around and say, hey, you're saying that these people are incapable of helping themselves, right? And it's sort of like, for example, something like this. Like if you were to say, hey, you're calling, like if I were to go, hey, well, the data says that black people are more likely to be sick, less likely to go to the doctor when it comes to COVID, stuff like that. they would twist it around and say, oh, so you're basically saying that black people are incapable of going to the doctor, you know, or black people are incapable of taking care of themselves or something like that. And it's like, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. You know, it's sort of like if you try to do something to like, oh, I want to help, you know, like say the criticism of using affirmative action as an example, since we're just talking about that, right? The criticism from this vein, right, would be to say that you don't think that black people are capable of getting into college themselves. You know, so it's like, oh yeah, I want to give a scholarship. You know, I want to use an affirmative action program to help black, you know, poor black people go to school. And then the way they would criticize it is say, oh well, you don't think these people are capable of making it on their own merits. It's like, no, I didn't say that at all. I said I want to help people. You know, I want to institute a program that addresses these, you know, inequality, you know, these inequities, I guess is what you would say, right? I want to create a program that, you know, we know that these inequities exist in our society. We know black people make less money. They're less likely to go to the doctor. They're less likely to have good health insurance, if health insurance at all. And they're more likely, you know, to catch COVID and die. We know that this is the truth, right? This is the truth. This is not any kind of conspiracy. This is not any kind of, this is like scientific data here. We know that this is what's happening. And I want to put in a policy to try to address that, right? We know this is the, but this is exactly what Tucker Carlson is doing right here. You know, it's bullshit, folks. It's bull, and you know, you gotta be like the reason I talk about this stuff is so that we can identify it when it happens. You know, these arguments, they have a way of, you know, slipping these arguments in when you're not paying attention. And if you don't address it, if you don't say something about it, then it'll just go right by, you know, and it's sort of it allows them to frame the narrative the way they want to frame it. And before you know it, you're going to be arguing like, you know, well, what are the merits of these policies and blah 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 blah. And they'll effectively shift the discussion into a, you know, a way that they have an advantage. And you won't be talking about actually like people getting the help they need anymore. You're going to be talking about, you know, government policies and blah 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 and racism and all this other bullshit that really has nothing to do with like the actual problem at hand. That's why this shit is important, folks. All right. Anyway, let's go on a little bit more. I don't want to go on all night here. Oh, wait. What the fuck is this? How do I get rid of this? I don't want this. Go away. How do I move this thing? Where did this thing come from? See, this is another thing. I don't know. No. Okay. Clear? No, I don't want to clear it. No, I don't want to. Shit. Going to press tab to go back. Okay. Tab. No. See, I got to learn how to use this program. I clicked the wrong thing and this like, oh, okay. Wow, that fucked me up. Let's go for a few more minutes and then we'll end this. I'm not going to go too late tonight. Moving on.
Several weeks ago, for example, the Food and Drug Administration released a fact sheet on a monoclonal antibody called sotrovimab. Sotrovimab is at this point the only monoclonal antibody treatment that is proven effective against the latest variant of the coronavirus. The FDA provided guidance for physicians in all 50 states, telling them how to determine which patient should get this treatment, this critical treatment. Physicians, the FDA explained, should consider, quote, race and ethnicity as they administer treatments. And so physicians are doing that across the country. In Utah, COVID patients are triaged by a scoring system that determines whether...
What's so wrong about that? See, here's what, if you listen to what he's saying, it sounds like the fucking KKK is running the CDC, doesn't it? You know? But we know the facts. It kind of doesn't land as hard when you actually know what the real facts are. When you know these are the people that need help the most, you know, then why does it become such a bad thing when it's like, yeah, you know, what is it? What is basically what he just said right there? You know, the CDC has decided, okay, these are the people that need the medicine the most. and they're going to try to get the medicine to the people who need it, right? Like I said, folks, earlier, when when your entire life has been privileged, then equality looks like oppression. And that's really like the entire story. That's pretty much it. I mean, if you look at everything Tucker Carlson says when it comes to the way that he frames things in relation to race, that's essentially it. That's what it's boiling down to. How come these people are getting treated the way I used to be treated? We should be getting it first. You know, that's what he's really trying to say here, right? I mean, first off, you got to remember they would come up with some kind of criticism. It doesn't really matter, right? It doesn't matter how the Biden people addressed COVID whatsoever. They could have eliminated COVID already. They would still have some kind of criticism because this is their job. Their job is to, you know, criticize the administration, right? Criticize the Democrats for whatever it is, right? Biden could invent, he could cure COVID, he could cure cancer, he could cure diabetes, he could give everybody a government issued robot that like massages your back and does your dishes for you, right? And like takes out the trash for you and gives you a blowjob or whatever, right? For free. And he would still come up with some kind of like, criticism because that's what their job is. You got to remember that Tucker Carlson's his business model is just to post outrage, is to make people angry. And he's doing everything he can to make people angry, right? So there's always going to be some kind of lie about whatever, right? And it's just that this particular load of bullshit really has a way of touching people, because people don't like racism. We've been kind of conditioned over, the last couple of decades to have a very visceral response when it comes to racism, right? And so anything that, especially when it comes from the government, you know, and it's sort of like insidious. It's like they're trying, like he's trying to kind of use that distaste for racist policies that we have as a nation to his advantage. He's trying to turn it around, you know. That's really what it is. They're trying to frame it like, the white people are the victims now. Because what? Because they get canceled from fucking Facebook or whatever, right? That's why, you know. Like suddenly they're the ones who are being oppressed. It's bullshit. You got to remember like, you know, you got to remember they're manufacturing this outrage here, right? And the reason why it's so effective is because their audience are sort of conducive to this because they've sort of been trained over the last 30 years, since like the fucking late 80s. They've been trained to hate people on command, Did you guys see my stream last week when I talked about the 2 minutes hate and all of that, and outrage posting and everything? That's basically what this is, That's Tucker Carlson's business model is he's a professional outrage, shit posting outrage guy that makes money when people get angry, you know. And he's found that he can make a shitload of money by pissing people off, and you know, also like possibly start a fucking race war at the same time. It's insidious. Let's turn this shit off. Tucker Carlson is a piece of shit. I hope he dies in a fire. No, I don't want to say that. That's wrong. I hope that his career just ends very, very badly, you know, and then he survives. I don't want him to die in a fire. That is wrong. It is wrong to wish death on your enemies, folks. Much better just to wish long-term humiliation. Anyway, that's all I really wanted to go through. Um, let's go ahead and end this. I am going to be streaming on Saturday as usual. You know, Saturday, this Saturday at Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Sorry, I'm a little tired here. I'm screwing myself up. 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time is when I will be streaming next week. Or fuck, next Saturday. Sorry, completely like I'm like really tired here, so I gotta quit. I gotta end this. But before we go, I just want to show you guys some stuff. So if you like my work and you want to see more of it, please check me out on DeviantArt. I'll put this down on the thing. Here's in the chat, my link to my DeviantArt site. I have a web comic. You can check me out on my web comic. It's hawanja.com. I guess I should be sharing the screen now, huh? But fuck it, I don't care. I'm tired. I'm leaving. There's my webcomic. I do have another YouTube channel called UCD Videos. If you want to see some non-political content from me, please check me out on UCD Videos. And if you like what I do and you want to give me money, then please check me out on Etsy. Here's my Etsy shop if it will open. It doesn't want to open. Come on, Etsy shop, open. What the hell? Why you got to do this to me? Anyway, here's my Etsy shop. If you like what I do and you want to like support the channel, please check me out there. Anyway, thank you guys for joining. I really appreciate it. I will see you all again on this next Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And don't know what we're going to be talking about. I think I'm going to do a stream on men's rights stuff and the manosphere. I think that's where we're going to move to next because we already got through all the alt-right stuff. Pretty much done with the alt-right stuff as a subject. Maybe might pick up a few more here and there. So I think we're going to start talking about, yeah, incels and like the manosphere and misogyny and anti-feminism and shit like that. Anyway, see you guys all then. Adios.